Blech. Hey, what's up? I just came back from my walk and I am now resting in the hammock, as you can see. No, I wanted to talk to you today about weighted blankets. There are things that we have in our lives that we always take for granted. And for me, I guess one of those things is blankets. I've just always somehow had a blanket, right? Like, growing up in your house, you have blankets. Um, you know, my wife always buys the blankets. I don't know, I just always have a blanket. I don't know what blankets cost. So, the idea of purchasing a weighted blanket, which is not a cheap thing, it can get pricey. It's an investment. It's an investment in wellness. That's the way I would think about it when getting a weighted blanket. You can't think of it as just something that's keeping you warm. It actually does something for your mental state. A part of me thought it was kind of like a quackery sort of thing, like it was a bit quackery, just sort of nonsense. But there really is something to it. So, like I said, weighted blankets always been on my radar. Actually, it's a lot like socks in a way. It's a lot like socks. When you're young, you take socks for granted. They always are around. And then when you get older and you realize that you actually have to buy socks, but you've never really paid for socks before, you've always just sort of had them. Your parents bought them, or somebody gifts you socks. It's funny. When you're getting older. When you're getting older. What? You got a banana? Okay. You're getting older in life when you get socks and you rejoice because you're like, wow, I don't have to spend money on socks. I don't know, it's just one of those things you don't want to waste your money on. Yes, banana. One of those things you don't want to waste money on.
No, don't wait a banana.
Yeah, we heard about the banana already. Okay, I'm talking about weighted blankets. So like I said, they are not cheap, and I've always just made them a lesser priority. I'm like, yeah, one day I'm going to get a weighted blanket. Never did. Biggest mistake of my life. Biggest regret that I have ever was not pulling the trigger on a weighted blanket. Eventually, my mama, she bought herself a weighted blanket. And after she bought herself a weighted blanket, she bought her boy, me, a weighted blanket. So I finally had a weighted blanket. Now here's the thing about weighted blankets. You need to take care of them. You can't it's not just something you throw in the wash. You know why? You can't wash a weighted blanket. Why? It's what better to do this on my walk than here in the hammock. But the hammock is more comfortable. So the thing is, the weighted blanket is made up of square quadrants that are filled with sand or beads or something, and that's what gives them the weight. Problem is, you can't put that in the wash. You just can't do it. So your weighted blanket, it can never be washed, which ultimately means that at some point, it's going to have a shelf life. How do I keep my weighted blanket staying fresh? Well, I put a blanket in between myself and the weighted blanket. So I have a blanket buffer in between myself and said weighted blanket. Sometimes that might be a sheet if it's too hot, because the weighted blankets, those things get hot. They trap heat really nicely. Summer, however, that's a different ball of wax altogether. And so whether it's a sheet or another blanket, you have to have a buffer between yourself and the weighted blanket. So you don't sweat on it or drool on it, or, you don't want these little munchkins. You don't want these little munchkins spilling their apple juice or whatever if they're watching TV in your bed. Can you shake me? Can you push me? Thank you. Now, I mentioned that it's an investment in mental health earlier. What is it that weighted blankets do? Well, they make you fall asleep. So I've never really had trouble sleeping in the first place. However, I did not realize that for my whole life, 36 years, I had no idea what I was missing out on because I didn't own a weighted blanket. They say all the time about how your quality of sleep is super important and linked to a bunch of stuff, whether it's learning or, your mood or, even weight gain. All that stuff is connected to sleeping. We have no idea what we are doing to our bodies when we don't get a good quality of sleep. Enter the weighted blanket. There's something about the quality of sleep. I also have a Casper mattress. So the combination of a Casper mattress with the weighted blanket, I realized that it took me 36 years of being alive before I realized that I was not getting the type of sleep and rest that I could have been getting. And it's all thanks to the weighted blanket. Even if I say sleep less than 6 hours, the quality, the deepness of that sleep is so intense and so restful that I still wake up feeling like $1,000,000. And I just can't tell you what it's done for my mental health. I don't know if it's helped me physically, but I feel so much more rested all the time, even when I stay up all night. Now, when I say I stay up all night, it's not like I'm staying up 24 hours straight, but generally, if I stay up to the wee hours of the morning and then I take like a power nap for 3 hours and then I wake up for the kids, with the weighted blanket, I still feel like I got some really, really good sleep. It's getting a hurricane here any second. That's why I got to get some hammock time before it does. You have a boo-boo?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what is the science behind the weighted blanket? How does it work? Well, it's something called the swaddling effect. It's like when you're a baby and you get wrapped up tight in a blanket, and there's something about that psychologically or mentally. I don't know if it's releasing chemicals or hormones or something naturally in the brain, but it makes me fall asleep almost instantly. In fact, when I get into bed and I watch TV, we have a Roku player, and it's got headphones. You can plug headphones into the remote, and I can actually listen to the TV because my wife, she goes to bed really early. I like to stay up and watch TV sometimes in bed. That's when I get a chance to actually watch movies. And in the past, it's always a double-edged sword because that happens to be the thing that ends up keeping me up. You know, I stay up later. I need to decompress. You know what I mean? I need to decompress after a long day. I just want to turn off my higher brain and watch meaningless entertainment. That's why I can't watch subtitled movies late at night in bed. That's another thing that'll make me fall asleep. I'm not always looking to watch a subtitled movie, though. Generally, I like to watch something that's just mindless or something that I've seen 100 times before, a comfort blanket in and of itself. But with the weighted blanket, I struggle. I can't keep my eyelids open. Here's a great example of how effective a weighted blanket is. I had 6 episodes of the new Better Call Saul season to binge through, and it took me a week just to get through that first episode. That's right. I kept falling asleep every night. I would get into bed at the same time. I would start the episode over and over and over again. And from Monday to Saturday, I absolutely could not get through. And on Sunday in the afternoon, I finally watched the first episode of Better Call Saul. I got over the hump, and I was able to get through the rest of the season, or at least the first half of the season thus far. That is disgusting, Noah. That is so gross. I can't believe you just did that. Now we got to put you in the bathtub, man. Why? How do I say this delicately? So one of the greatest takeaways of having the weighted blanket and getting this incredible quality of sleep and being able to fall asleep effortlessly, it makes me think of people that take sleeping medication to fall asleep. But I can't help but wonder how it could help or ease or mitigate the problem by introducing a weighted blanket into the situation. Would said person not need to take any kind of sleeping medication at all? Would said person not have to take melatonin? Who knows, man? Who friggin' knows? It's just another check mark on the side of non-invasive methods for wellness. Point being, if you see a weighted blanket go on sale at Amazon or wherever, or there's a Black Friday sale, do not hesitate. Pull the trigger. Get yourself a weighted blanket. You will not regret it. Absolutely one of the best things that I've acquired. And I'll tell you, when this thing craps out, as it will eventually at some point, I will be online getting myself another one and another one. I never, ever, ever want to not have a weighted blanket.